Today on With the First Pick, it's our final pre-draft defensive line rankings. This is the deepest position in any draft in recent memory, and it may not be close.
Oh, yeah.
And to help me make sense of it all, 10-year NFL veteran, former defensive lineman out of the University of Central Florida. I said South Florida producer, striker, and that does not go over well with our guy, Leger Douzable. UCF,
No, it doesn't.
LD, UCF. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked BMAC when we did DBs last week. How mad are you that you came out in a time when NIL wasn't even a word?
The funny thing is, I go back and forth. I had these conversations with some of my friends that are retired, and we're like, what do you think like 18 to 20-year-old us would have thought about? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, would we have because like I bled UCF. Like, I love that. Like, I knew that's where I was going once I took my visit. So it's like, would I have left? Because I actually flirted with leaving after my sophomore year. And at the time, because something had happened, if a team had threw a bag at me, they might would have gotten me my sophomore year, right? I'm not gonna lie to you.
And not only that, just in terms of the 3 or 4 year experience in college, but the ability to make a ton of money. And I thought you were going to say, as an 18-year-old, you don't need to have $800,000 in your bank account.
It would have been nice to have it, though.
Yeah, just got to make
we
sure
used
you
to
got
get happy when we got those little Pell Grant checks.
Right, exactly. I get free books. What?
Exactly.
That of course
money to buy clothes. Okay.
I know. That's Leger. I'm Ryan Wilson. This is episode 241. In case you don't know, Leger, get the old machine here. Got 16 days.
Yeah.
2025 NFL. That is crazy, man. I can't believe we're here. But for now, we're going to talk some of these defensive linemen because that's what that's what you do. I mean, you talk all NFL in college, but you played defensive line in college. You played defensive line in the league. You know these guys better than anyone. And you and I, because you call games in the fall as well in the college, you and I are talking about these dudes going back to September. And this guy, hey, Striker, let's see the individual rankings before we get to the consensus with the first pick rankings. So this is how Leger and I sent in our top 10 to Striker for him to use the WTFP tabulator machine to get a consensus ranking. But we both had Mason Graham, who was number 1 over the summer, and that did not change. I had his teammate, what's Grant's first name? I'm blanking on his name.
Kenneth Grant.
Kenneth Grant, thank you. 330-pound Kenneth Grant, and I forgot his name. At 2, you had him at 3. Walter Nolen, closer to 300 pounds out of Ole Miss. You had him 2, I had him 3. So a pretty similar consensus among the top 3 individually. And then things get a little interesting. Derrick Harmon, I had a little higher than you did, and I think you and I are on the same page. I described Derrick Harmon as a slow burn. Like, he isn't going to wow you immediately. You have to watch a lot of Derrick Harmon to sort of not talk yourself into him, but to see the things he's capable of doing. Darius Alexander, we watched him in person at the Senior Bowl just take over, and you talked to him at the Combine, and you asked him specifically about the athleticism. I think on the pick 6, right?
Yeah, 58-yarder, man. Dropped down in zone coverage, right over the ball. Took it, jumped over an opponent. The offensive lineman fell in front of him. He jumped over him, and House called it.
Yeah, and that speaks to his athleticism. TJ Sanders is on your list and mine as well. You have him higher than I do. But 2 names that I have on my list that you don't. Alfred Collins out of Texas and Deion Walker out of Kentucky. You have Shemar Stewart on your list, and I don't, out of Texas A&M. The other Shemar, which is probably unfair to say, but he's a baller for sure. And you also have – who's the other guy?
Tyleik Williams.
Tyleik Williams. I think he's just missed. I think he's like 11 for me. So he's just outside my top 10. And we'll talk about all these guys. A lot of similarities, so that makes me feel good. It might make Leger feel bad. We'll figure it out together. But let's start at the top.
No, we've worked on you for the last 3 years, Ryan. So when it comes to D-line, I'm pretty confident in your rankings.
I'm getting better thanks to you because I've had some misses, and we don't want to talk about those. Some guys that I fell in love with throughout the process that I had to dial back. But let's start with Mason Graham. Yeah. Physically, he does not look like Derrick Harmon, for example, getting off the bus.
No.
And I don't want to say I have concerns about him. Is he a top 5 pick all day long?
The tape shows it now. Again, people are concerned about his measurables, right? And they had the same concern, and we had this conversation earlier this year, Ryan, about Braden Fisk, who probably should have been a first-round pick.
He should have been.
Right, because the arm length isn't there. Mason Graham, body type doesn't wow you like you talked about as well. But go turn on that Ohio State tape. And the quickness that he plays with, the leverage that he plays with. He's not the biggest guy. I think he weighed in, at 305 or something like that.
But he doesn't get moved off.
296, so right under 300. But he doesn't get moved off the ball. That's the
No.
thing, because he plays with such great leverage and he's so explosive in his lower half. Now, you wouldn't know by looking at him because he doesn't really have like those thick tree trunk legs,
right,
that you're accustomed to seeing D tackles have. But his explosiveness off the ball, you see it on tape all the time. I vividly remember in the red zone, I think Ohio State, it was 3rd and 10, and they ran a running back draw. And the explosiveness he had out of his stance to not only beat the guard's hands like it was a pass rush, but then to get down the line of scrimmage and get a tackle for loss on 13. That just shows you what he does. Now, people, again, are concerned with the arm length, and sometimes it does show up on tape when he's engaged, trying to disengage, right? He doesn't get knocked off the ball, but when he tries to disengage at times, because he has shorter arms, he does struggle at times. But when you talk about interior pass rush from day one, he's going to be able to help you. He's such an athlete, and we asked him about this at the combine ride, that as the coaches allowed him to stand up and rush on 3rd down in the interior, which it's rare you see a defensive tackle do that, because if they were to check the play and run, you're kind of out of position. Like, you can get knocked off the ball, but he's such a fluid athlete that they allowed him to pass rush from a 2-point stand. So, like, Jacksonville Jaguars, don't overthink it, especially if Travis and Abdul Carter are gone. Like, take Mason Graham.
And I cannot stress enough how important it is not to get caught up in the numbers as I'm looking at the numbers here, because you talk about Braden Fisk, we talk all the time about Kyle Hamilton, Brian Branch, the list goes on and on. Who? Kobe Turner. That's right. Absolutely. But I'll just throw this out here, because I think you're right. I think Jacksonville makes too much sense. He's a great player, and you're surrounded him by Trevon Diggs, who just got his 5th-year option picked up, Mason Smith, who you drafted last year in the 2nd round at LSU, and, of course, Josh Hines-Allen. So it's not asking him to do everything. He's going to be surrounded by dudes who can get after in the front 4. But his hand size, does hand size matter for defensive linemen?
My thing is, if you're efficient with your hands, I don't think it matters, essentially. Now, again, on tape, it doesn't show, like, because he gets engaged with guys, doesn't get knocked off the ball. I think the arm length is the most important thing. Like, hand size, to me, like when you're a receiver and stuff, that obviously matters. In quarterback, positions where you have to, like, grip or you're around the football, that matters. But I don't think it matters as much for D tackle.
Okay, he has small hands for defensive linemen, but if it doesn't matter, that's fine. Arm length, he's in the 12th percentile among defensive linemen. So it's 32 on the dot.
That's the concern, yeah.
But as you noted, and Braden Fisk told us this last year at the combine, he goes, I know I've had short arms. I've had them my whole life. I know how to win with short arms, and he did. So I'm just asking these questions because I would imagine these are what teams are going to be talking about in the pre-draft process.
Yeah, and to your point, Ryan, we actually asked him about that at the combine, and I talked about how it seems on tape he kind of knows some of his deficiencies. So he's always at a point where he gets his hands on people before they can get him on him, right? And he uses that quickness just like Braden Fisk. So my thing is, if you've been dealing with this your whole life, this is the only way you know how to play. So just like anything in life, you adjust when, not gifted in one area or another, and that's what he's done for his career.
Absolutely. And I think he didn't wake up yesterday with 32-inch arms. He's had them. And he's number one. I think on everyone that we've talked to or seen has him number one among the defensive linemen. The guy we'll talk about in a second who's tied for second, Walter Nolen, might be making a move. But let's talk about his teammate at Michigan, Kenneth Grant, who is a completely different body type. He is 330 all day long. And if he had played anywhere else but Michigan, we'd be talking about him like he's a game wrecker, which he is.
Yeah. He's going to help you day one in the run game, but I think his highest upside is pass rushing.
Thank you.
And we saw that in the Ohio State game as well. I think he's a guy that can not only push the pocket, but he's one of those big dancing bears, is what we call them in locker rooms and in meeting rooms for defensive linemen, because you talked about every bit of 330, but when this dude turns it over, he can run. I mean, there's a clip we actually asked him about, or I asked him about at the combine, where he chased. Hold
on, wait a second, Leger.
Yeah,
we got to make it clear. It's Stryker's Penn State team that got run down, the running back. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. He runs down the running back like 40 yards from behind. Like, again, he turned it over. So this dude, I believe he was on Bruce Feldman's freak list for a reason. Just because he's a freak athletic guy at 330 pounds. Guys at 330 should not be able to move like he moves. And I think his highest upside is pass rushing. And I think he will be a player that you will not have to take off the field on third down. He'll be a 3-down player. But from day one, he is going to help you in your run defense.
Absolutely. In my notes from the fall, freakishly athletic at times. He actually plays with low pad level, which is a concern when you're almost 6'4", because sometimes these guys play too high. And we'll talk about Deion Walker from Kentucky in a moment. He plays too high at times, and that's a concern because if he played with the proper technique, he could be unstoppable at times. The other thing that Kenneth Grant does, you talk about the ability to get into the backfield. If he doesn't get into the backfield, he's going to knock the ball down. Like, he has eyes on the quarterback. He gets his hands up. In the first 6 games, I counted 5 pass knockdowns. So that's also a way that you can help as a pass rusher if you're not getting home. And if he were there at 21 for my Pittsburgh Steelers, I'd be doing the dancing bear dance if they got him, because
I honestly don't think he makes it past Arizona, though.
And absolutely,
because Arizona makes the most sense. Now, again, they kind of refortified their D-line this offseason. They bring in Dalvin Tomlinson, but I believe he's about to be 30 or is already 30 years old. Calais Campbell is an older guy as well. Took Darius Robinson, who kind of moves up and down the line, and they took Josh Sweat to be on the outside. So I think you plug that big guy there in the middle. Now, again, they did take Dalvin Tomlinson, but I think for the future, it makes a lot of sense for Arizona Cardinals to take him.
And it's not even the craziest thing in the world, or any disrespect to Mason Graham, to think that Kenneth Grant might be the better player in 3 or 4 years.
There's a high possibility.
Yeah. All right, next up, tied also for number 2 in the consensus with the first pick rankings, Walter Nolen. 6. He's similar in size to Mason Graham. Looks a little different when he gets off the bus. 6, almost 6'4", 296. He has 32.5-inch arms. And you talk about juiced up or twitched up or whatever adjective you wanted to use to describe him. Good luck blocking him if you were a guard or a center.
Yeah, again, you talked about it, twitched up, strong at the point of attack, redirects off of blocks really well, strong hands and violent hands at the point of attack. He's just springy out of his stance. Like, he's one of those guys that you kind of compare to what's my guy, Oliver, and with the Buffalo Bills.
Ed Oliver,
and then also a little Quinton Bomber, Keanu Benton in him as well.
Oh, I had a Keanu Benton. All right, here we go. We're getting somewhere. I had that comp out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, just springy out of his stance. And the interesting thing about Walter Nolen is, Ryan, he was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. So this is a guy that's always kind of had the spotlight on him, and yet he's still been able to be productive everywhere he's been. Now, the big question mark with him is, I believe he went to 5 schools in 6 years or something like that, going back to high school. So there's some concerns when it comes to that. But you talked about it earlier. There is some murmurs going around that he's closing the gap on Mason Graham when it comes to how people view them in this draft.
And the thing is, if we're just talking strictly on the field and you have no idea what's going on off the field, you're just watching these guys, that's an easy conclusion to land on. You mentioned the schools that he played at Texas A&M before he transferred to Ole Miss, and you mentioned he's been the best player on the field most of his life. We talked to him at the Senior Bowl, and I asked him one of his toughest matchups along the offensive line, and this is just more to show respect to this young man who's been catching some flack in recent weeks and months. He said Will Campbell at LSU, who has, he has short arms, he can't play tackle. He said, I've been going up against him since high school, and he's that dude can ball. So I just mentioned that as to point out that at the end of the day, it's all about what you put on tape. You can talk about measurables if you want to, but Will Campbell has been just as good as Walter Nolen has been on the other side of the ball. And no one's talking about Walter Nolen going in the second round because he's got sub 33-inch arms.
Not at all.
So Walter Nolen, does he go inside the top 20?
I believe so. I know you want him to fall to 21 to your Steelers.
Yeah,
you would run that pick in. Yeah, but I believe so. Now there could, depending on if there's like a run on, a couple offensive tackles, maybe even a couple edge guys, right? That could sway how the draft falls out. But I think for sure he goes top 20.
Yeah, he's legit. All right, as long as we're talking about the Steelers, I'll give you this choice. You're Mike Tomlin, Omarr Khan. Let's say you have Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolen, Shedeur Sanders, and I'll throw in BMAX guy, Nick Emanwari, the safety out of South Carolina. They're 21. Who you taking?
It's interesting, right? Because they already technically have a Walter Nolen and Keanu Benton, right? But why not have 2 of them? You know what I'm saying? Just because, honestly, man, I mean, my Ironhead can only play for so many years, even though he's still playing at a high level.
Yeah, he's mid-30s.
I go back to them having Javon Hargrave, but I kind of feel like Kenneth Grant can be in that mold. So I honestly would lean towards Kenneth Grant because at times the Steelers did not play good against the run, and I think he would help them at doing that. You know me, I have an affinity and love Walter Nolen, but again, I think Keanu could come into his own this year, and he's been a good player. But it's just like when you're surrounded by all the players they have on the D line, you're kind of the forgotten guy there.
Yep.
So I would lean probably towards Kenneth Grant. And honestly, I think Walter Nolen may be gone by that pick anyway. I think Miami at 13 makes a lot of sense for them as well.
Love it. All right. Top 3 in the consensus with the first pick board in the books. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll hit picks 4 through 7. Defensive lineman right after this.
Yeah, we always find our way back home.
All right, LD, number 4 on the consensus with the first pick ranking, Darius Alexander. And I've been putting him in my first round the last few iterations of the mock draft, usually pick 25 to 30. I have him going there. We'll see if he goes in round 1, but clearly you and I both like him. I had him as number 5 on my list, and you had him as number 4. So I think he's right on that first round range. We talked about what he did at the Senior Bowl. Went to the combine right at 4.95, has 34-inch arms. There are very few holes in this game physically. And then when you see him play, whether it's non-power 4 or the opportunities he had against some of these power 4 guys in Mobile, what are the concerns? I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, the one concern that I saw on tape is just at times when he's trying to disengage off a block, he reaches instead of like violently disengaging. But that's a coaching thing. Like to me, that's not something that can't be taught. Like he has the mindset to be a violent rusher. His stutter bull versus Pittsburgh in the bowl game was ridiculous. He literally put Buddy on his back and got to the quarterback. We talked about the interception and the athletic ability. He can play up and down the line of scrimmage, plays with really good leverage, which again, for somebody that's like 6'4", it's rare coming out of college. Guys tend to play a little bit too high, but he plays with good leverage and has really good flexibility and bend and is able to hold on to double teams. You talked about some of the better competition, the Pittsburgh game, the Mississippi State game. He went and dominated in those games. So if you're worried about him being in Toledo, there were question marks about Quinyon Mitchell, and then he went to the Senior Bowl and just demolished everybody. Right. Yep. And was clearly the best corner in the draft. I think Darius Alexander, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, make a lot of sense at the back of the first round. Honestly, selfishly, I hope he falls to 42 to the Jets.
Yeah. No, I get it. I had the Jets in my 3-round mock draft taking Jackson Dart at 42. People said he ain't going to be there at 42. I said, I
think he will be there at 42.
I might rather have Darius Alexander than Jackson Dart at 42 if I'm the Jets. Yeah. If you get Mimbu at 7, for example, because
talking about getting the trenches right,
you got to start there. Because again, these quarterbacks, and that's no disrespect to Jackson Dart, it's just so hard to get it right, especially outside the first round. You can get a defensive lineman right at pick 50 and be quite happy with them for the next 4 years.
And I look at it this way: like they took Justin Fields on a 2-year deal. He's still young. I mean, I think he just turned 25. So it's just like, why not give him every opportunity? You have a good backup in Tyrod Taylor. Give him every opportunity to potentially be the quarterback of the future if you're the Jets, and then maybe revisit the quarterback position next year.
Yep. The other thing about Darius Alexander, when we talked to him at the combine, that dude knows history. Like we had a little social media game where we showed him pictures of old-timey guys from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. I think he had the best score of anyone that came through.
I think he only missed like one guy.
Yeah, so he was all in on that. I don't want to name names, but one of the guys we spoke with from Canada, he didn't come to football till late. Like he was a hockey guy, so he's like, man, I don't know any of these guys. So I didn't want to. I'm not gonna call him that. It wasn't his fault. That's like asking me hockey guys. I would not be able to get any of those guys. All right, number 4 was Darius Alexander at Toledo. I'll set the over under. I'll set it at 41.5 in terms of where he's picked before or after.
Ooh.
So I'm not going to give you the Jets.
I see that. That's messed up, bro. I'm gonna say under. I talking to the few teams I've talked to, like they love a lot of teams love this kid. They love this kid, and he's been one of the big draft risers as we've gone through this process. So 32 picks, 41, which means 9 picks in the second round. That's the sweet spot for him. I don't think he gets past 41, 42. I think is the latest he'll get picked.
Yep.
And then, so I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna go under 41.
I think so too. And I know this is a deep class, but there's a difference between Darius Alexander and, in my mind, what comes next in terms of the guys we talked about. And we'll see. We'll find out together in 16 days, maybe 17 days. It goes on day 2. All right, next up.
We're really not gonna find out for a year or two, but
that's true. Right. Exactly. And that's the other thing when you do this draft stuff. Like, you could be right on draft weekend as a draft analyst, quotations mark, and be wrong for the next 2 or 3 years about who the player actually was. Like, we all knew Zach Wilson was going top 5. No one said he was not going to be very good. So
I thought he was going to be good. So I'll hang my hat on that one.
Yeah. I don't remember anyone. And it wasn't all just that pro day, but that pro day didn't hurt when he was slinging the ball around like a
correct,
like Uncle Rico. All right, next up.
Watch him go to Miami and ball out if he gets an opportunity.
I saw that Woody conveniently forgot him when he was talking about that draft class. He didn't mention Zach Wilson. That was something that was reported from the owners' meetings. All right, next up, number 5 on the consensus with the first pick list, defensive lineman Derrick Harmon out of Oregon. And I describe him as a slow burn. I like him a little bit more than you. I think he's more likely to be a second-round pick. And just because he doesn't flash in any one particular area, he's just a steady Eddie. And if you're not paying attention closely, you might just say, all right, he's out there, but he's not being an impact player. I think there is something to it more than that. But he's not going to flash like a Walter Nolen or a Kenneth Grant or a Darius Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. I actually have him as a 3rd round guy. Okay. I know some people have him going in the 1st round, and he's that guy you talked about it earlier. Like, you want him walking off the bus first because he looks the part, and even on tape, he looks big. Right now, he does have some quickness and good get off, but he doesn't use his hands particularly well. It's almost like he's just in an attack system with no rules. The way he plays at times, right now, again. That could be coaching. Could somebody get him to use his hands? I just think that in today's NFL and college game, it's so different. Like, and again, there are, and again, respectfully, there are some programs that don't have good coaches, right? Like, that's just life, right? But I just feel like the way that there's so many camps, and a lot of these camps that these kids go to, like, they literally have like all the tools to be somewhat efficient in college. And you can tell by, like, when we watch a guy like Darius Alexander at a Toledo, right? When we watch other guys like Walter Nolen and how violent they are, or Shemar Turner, who we're going to talk about later, like, you can tell that these guys have been through some good coaching and they know how to use their hands efficiently. I look at his teammate, Jamari Caldwell, uses his hands efficiently. Again, people may say he doesn't look the part, but one thing that dude can do is move, and he can play violent with his hands. And then when you see Derrick Harmon's game, it's just literally like him consistently just getting up the field, like not playing blocks. Now, he'll make some splash plays for sure, and there's some stiffness is there, and he plays a little high. But again, most players play high coming out of college.
Yep.
But I'm just not as high on him. I think he can be a good player. I wouldn't feel comfortable taking him in the 1st round.
And you know what's funny? He doesn't play the same position, but he reminds me a little bit of the NFL buzz around Drake Jackson, the edge rusher out of USC, who weighed 265, 270. And I remember watching him thinking, okay, what's the conversation we're having here? I remember talking to scouts saying he's going to get drafted higher than you think because of the physical tools. And Derrick Harmon's almost 6'5", 313, 10.5-inch hands, 34 and 3/8-inch arms.
He looks the part now for sure.
4.95. So all those things together, and then you get into these draft meetings and you ask the defensive line coach, can you work with that? Well, yeah, he's going to say, of course I can work with that. And maybe sometimes those guys get overdrafted. And that's not to say Derrick Harmon is not a good player, but he has not flashed as consistently as the guys that we're talking about. And that's sort of that's the angle we're taking in terms of trying to evaluate these guys. I still think he goes top 40. You think you have him graded?
Yeah. I think just because you talked about it, the measurables and people always, when it comes to measurables and what a guy could potentially be, like every coach, I won't say every coach, but a lot of coaches feel like they could be that guy to get the most out of the talent that's in the body, right? And that's where you find yourself getting in trouble sometimes, right? A guy that we're probably talking about on another pod for edge rushers, Shemar Stewart falls into that category as well, because he's a freak athlete, has all the measurables and everything, but the production just hasn't been there. Where Derrick Harmon, he actually has some pretty good production, right? You just talked about it, the consistency of play. I feel like he's more of a waist bender too instead of a knee bender. I wonder if there's some medical things there because, like I talked about some of his stiffness. You see him on the edge; he's not able to really bend at times and get to that edge and get to the quarterback. So I wonder if there's. And I don't want to put anything negative out there, but it's just on tape when you watch it, it looks like there could be maybe some ankle stiffness or something there, maybe even knee stiffness there. But again, looks the part, will make splash plays for you. And you talked about it. When you're a guy that's 6'5", 313, moving like him, running sub-5s, you're going to get drafted higher than maybe you probably should.
If he's getting off the bus and then Jamari Caldwell gets off the bus next to him and you say, all right, let's picking teams, no one's taking Jamari Caldwell first, even though once you see these guys play, they
correct.
Both fall. And I think that's the trap that sometimes us in the media and teams fall into as well. Sometimes guys can just play. And Derrick Harmon is off to a good start in terms of the physical gifts he's been given by God, but a little more consistency. That's it. But he's going to get drafted high. Next up, on the consensus list, TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. And outside of Texas A&M and Ole Miss, South Carolina had probably the most fun dudes to watch on defense because they got after it. And they have Kyle Kennard, they have Eman Worry, they have Tonka Hemingway.
Yep.
And they have TJ Sanders. Long-legged, long-armed, high-waisted.
Demetrius Knight.
Yeah, that's right. The linebacker who's going to get drafted probably higher than people think. I love watching TJ Sanders because he plays with twitch. He plays with power. He wins consistently. He's a nightmare on the interior for the interior offensive lineman, play after play. And it helps when you have guys around you that can do these things. But even in one-on-one situations, he was winning consistently.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You talk about interior pass rush, really has some pop out of his hips. He's a guy that can win. I go back to the Senior Bowl, Ryan. We were watching the D-line go. Literally, Stutter Bulls just runs the dude over and gets to the quarterback and plays with so much energy and excitement as well. He's a guy I think that's going to go a lot higher than people think too. I think he's a top 50 guy.
Yep.
And he's going to be a guy that can start for you in day one. One thing about pass rushing that I don't think is talked about enough, true good pass rushers never stop their feet. They're always constantly moving their feet and they're always going north and south. Right. And that's what TJ Sanders does a really good job of. So even when you try to get him off kilter, his feet are moving and he can counter off of it. So a guy that has a bigger body, again, in the run game, is violent with his hands. He just knows how to get vertical and get after the quarterback. So I think he's a top 50 guy for sure.
I agree with that. I said he's a better pass rusher, but he was still good against the run. And to your point about north and south, he's consistently shooting gaps. He's consistently being disruptive in the backfield versus the run game. And, sometimes you're coming out and you're good at one thing and not the other. He gives you a good base if you're drafting him second round, whatever it is, top 60, top 50, to come in and be effective early on. All right, number 7 on the list. And I had his teammate higher, but I do love Vernon Broughton out of Texas. You do not have Alfred Collins on your list. Let's just talk quickly about Alfred Collins. What were the concerns, if you had any, with Alfred, his teammate, defensive lineman for Texas? And we'll talk about Vernon.
Yeah, I think he's just the first, second down player. Now, he does a really good job, on a run, and he does a good job of getting extension and plays with a lot of power. But guys on my list, usually those guys go in the third round, the guys that are first, second down guys. Everybody on my list literally has the tool set where they can help you out on third down as well. And I think, to me, Alfred Collins is the first, second down player.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Obviously, I respect your opinion.
He's a good player. I just wouldn't take him in the side. I would take him more in the third.
Gotcha. Vernon Broughton, you like in the second, though, correct? You and me both.
Great.
I have him
6'4". Go ahead.
This much ahead of TJ Sanders. I could take either one depending on the team and the fit, but I think they're both second-round guys. 4 sacks, 26 hurries last season. Said he's a solid run defender, but he's at his best when he keeps his pads low and incredibly disruptive as a pass rusher. Uses power and twitch to create problems for offensive linemen. He gets into the quarterback's face consistently, and his motor is always on full speed.
Yeah, Broughton's a prototypical 3-4 guy. You want to get him kind of on the inside eye of the tackle and let him rush over that guard. Give him space, and he can go, man. Great length, uses extension really well, good at the point of attack. You talked about it, probably a little bit better of a pass rusher than run defender. And I think a lot of it is once he keeps his pad levels down, his down. He's really good against the run as well. But I think he's going to be a prototypical 3-4 guy. Guys looking for a 3-4 end that can be disruptive and get in that wide 4-eye. And then when it converts to pass on play action pass, he is going to put that guard in a blender and pass rush and use efficient hands to get on the edge and win. So I love watching his tape a lot. Again, I think he could play 3 technique, but I think he will be best suited at 6'4", 305 to be a 3-4 in.
35-inch arms too.
Yeah,
his arms are literally 3 inches longer than Mason Graham's. More of a concern if you're going, like if he's going against Will Campbell, for example, he has 3 inches on him lengthwise, and that does matter at some point, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially like you talk about Will Campbell blocking down, right? And he's in that inside eye and he's got the B gap. When I say B gap, right? When you look at the center next to the guard, that's the A gap. The guard next to the tackle, that's the B gap. Well, so Will's trying to cut him off, right? And he does a nice job with those 35-inch arms, getting extension, getting off of that and staying in the B gap. That's where that arm length comes into play. And you see it on tape all the time because they put him in the 4-eye at Texas a lot of time, and that's where he made hay. So that's why I think he'll be a really good. And he's kind of reminds me of like Calais Campbell coming out a little bit. As far as their height, now Calais was like 6'7". That's the only difference. But
right.
I would love to see what his arm length was because you talked about the 35-inch arm length. I would have to assume it was pretty close.
I'll look that up for you, but I'm going to ask you a question while I do look it up. In terms of the arm length advantage, not just Will Campbell, but if you're in this case Vernon Broughton, and you're going up against a how important is arm length when you're trying to push-pull? Because I would imagine that matters too, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly, because you want to work that extension as soon as that offensive tackle sits down. Because you have that extension, that's when you can pull through with that opposite arm, right? So, like, having that extension, you see him do that on tape as well. Like, having that extension to be able to keep guys off kilter, to be able to redirect yourself to make pass rush moves or even just get off run blocks is massive when you have that arm. Extension is everything. Like when you can get extension and see what's and diagnose the play, like it's a lot better. Like I'll give you this example, right? When you're right here and you're off on the edge, it's a lot easier to see the play than when you're like this and the guy's body is like in part of your peripheral, like you can't see. So playing with that extension and then having the arm length that Vernon Broughton has, it gives him the advantage.
And it's funny you say that because when we were talking to Kyle Long, talking about the offensive lineman, he talked about the importance of using one arm as an offensive lineman to punch, because once you get two arms, it's shorter, and then you're screwed if you get over your toes. So it's a dance between you guys, offensive and defensive linemen, trying to figure out who's doing what.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because we had a saying in the D-line room, one arm is longer than two. And especially when you're talking about guys that use that long arm and pass rush, again, there's a stutter bull where you use both arms, but there's that long arm where you can use just the one arm and you get that extension. And that allows you to control the guy, whether you want to counter inside or counter outside with that arm length. And it's literally, it feels like you're almost like 2 feet away from him with that arm length, which allows you to diagnose and see where the quarterback is and see which move you want to make.
It's almost like you guys are doing the exact same thing, but for obviously different reasons, because you're trying to diagnose as the offensive lineman, you're trying to see where the defensive lineman is going, you're trying to figure out what to do with your free hand and where to put it. And Kyle talked a lot about getting underneath the ribs and the pad here to control. He said it doesn't matter how big the defensive lineman is, you're going to have a little control if you have on the V of his neck, and then you can get under his armpit there and sort of direct him where you want to go. So that's incredibly interesting. And I think a lot of times, myself included, when you're watching offensive and defensive line plays, like, oh, these are just two big guys running into each other. And there's a lot more to it than that. By the way,
it's a chess game.
What do you think Calais Campbell's arm length was at the combine?
37.
You tied his shoes standing up. 35 3/4.
So it's close. It's right where
it's freakishly long. Absolutely, that is freakishly long for sure.
That's what I'm saying. So that's why I made the comp, because it kind of reminds me of how he was when he was at Miami.
All right, let's take another quick break, and then we'll hit the consensus with the first pick rankings for the defensive linemen 8 through 10 right after this.
One of golf's elite courses, Quail Hollow, hosts the game's top players at the PGA Championship this May on CBS.
All right, Leger, down the stretch here, number 8 on the with the first pick consensus rankings. I had this guy number 7. You had him number 10. Omarr Norman-Lott out of Tennessee. And my comp for him, because of his size and weight, almost 6'2", 291, was Braden Fisk. He did have long arms,
Yep.
almost 34-inch arms. But primarily the comp was because he's twitchy, and he can win with power, he can win with speed, and he is sort of like what we said about a lot of these guys. He's a nightmare inside if you are a slow-footed interior offensive lineman.
Yeah, he's got to go into an attacking style defense. Like that's a defense that's going to really highlight his skill set. You talked about it. To me, he has the best get off from an interior defensive tackle in this draft class, and I don't think it's particularly close. I wouldn't watch that NC State game. He's just so freakish when it comes to his twitchiness off the ball and his ability to use the leverage, because he is a shorter guy. But you talked about he actually has pretty long arms. I think like 34-inch arms, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So not only is he shorter and he has leverage on you, but he can get extension really quick as well. So things that do concern you because of the size, sometimes he does get engulfed in double teams. Like that is a concern going forward. And that's probably why he's maybe not talked about even higher. Also, he didn't technically start at Tennessee, even though they rotated a lot, and he went to Arizona State before that as well. But he's a guy that, because of his stature and his twitchiness, can play the run because he gets off with so much anger and violence that he knocks offensive guards back, right? So the main concern, though, if you play one of them G-scheme teams, and when I say G-scheme, I mean counter, power, that's when you're concerned on double team, because he can get moved off the ball a little bit.
Yep. And I said he was a disruptor, like shooting gaps in the run game, but he'll keep his eyes in the backfield, one-on-one blocks, shed those blocks, and get to the running back. But to your point, when you start talking double teams, it's a little different. But at 6'2", 291, you put him next to a Kenneth Grant, and that's how you sort of attack that problem. You don't have two guys weighing 291 out there, right?
And and I think from day one, he'll help you on third down. Like that's where he's going to make his hay. Kind of reminds me like of Elijah Chapman, who should have been drafted, ended up being undrafted, ended up being a starter on nickel for the Giants this past year. Like from day one, like even Kobe Turner, his first year with Aaron, like that's where he made his key mark. His first year was his pass rusher on third down. Like that's what Omarr, Norman-Lott can give you. And then I think he'll gravitate and grow into being maybe an every down, starter for you after that.
All right. Tied for ninth on our list, Alfred Collins out of Texas, who we talked about. I actually like Alfred a little bit better than Vernon. You like him more probably a round later or so. And then let's talk about Shemar Turner, who played obviously on that Texas A&M team, played with Nick Scorton, played with Shemar Stewart, edge rushers that we'll talk about in an upcoming podcast before the draft. I was not as high on Shemar as you were. Turner, I had him as a early to mid day 3 guy. So sell me on who he is, and I'll give you the measurables real quick. 6'3", 290, almost 34-inch arms.
Yeah, we talked about Omarr, Norman-Lott playing with violence. I don't think there's a D tackle that plays with more violence than Shemar Turner. Like the violence he plays to get off of blocks and knock guys back and disengage, I think is top tier in this draft. Very active D tackle. You always want that interior pass rush. He gives you that. And then one thing that I really love when you turn on his tape, Rye, he plays hard. Yeah. Like it's rare to find guys that play as hard as he does. Like Savion Jones is the guy that comes to mind. He's the only other guy I would put like in that realm that plays as hard as Shemar Turner. So if I'm a team evaluating a guy, I know I'm gonna get everything out of this guy every single play. And he is going to give you that energy. He's going to give you that violence. It's a violent game. The NFL is a violent game, and he epitomizes that as well. So, like you said, right, I'm a little bit higher on him than you. I wouldn't be mad taking him at the back of the second, early third.
Love it.
I know you said you had a day 3 on him.
Here's the thing. I'm looking through my notes here. The rare times they lined him up outside like a 7 technique, I said I loved his bend around the edge. He plays with low center of gravity and bend. And power makes him a handful for offensive tackles. And then once he got into the bottom, when he played zero sometimes over the center, he'd walk the center back into the quarterback's lap. To your point about the violence and the high motor with which he plays. I just thought he was a little undersized from watching him in the fall. I haven't watched him since the season ended. But he had some first step.
They said the same thing about Kobe Turner.
Yeah. How'd that turn out? I'll tell you this.
That's what I'm saying. Right, guys that can pass rush the interior are always going to get knocked up the board. Because a lot of people thought Kobe Turner was like a 4th round pick, and I was like, he's a 3rd round pick all day. Watching the tape at Richmond and then watching it at Wake Forest, and just like Omarr Lott, he didn't start at Wake Forest. He was a rotational guy, but every time he was in there, he made plays.
Yep. And the other thing, and we talk about this normally with quarterbacks, but something I do repeat a lot, fit matters. Like going next and learning next to Aaron Donald in a situation where you don't have to be the dude, allowed Kobe Turner to perhaps learn on the job, where at other times, if you make a mistake, it's going to be a 50-yard gain or whatever.
Correct. Yeah. So like fit matters, going to the right place. That's why I said with Omarr Norman-Lott, he needs to go to an attacking style defense. Now I think Shemar Turner can play in a 3-4 or a 4-3 just because he's that violent with his hands. But going to a traditional 4-3 would probably best suit his skill set as a 3 technique. But like you said, they played him at the edge. They played him as a head up 0. Like he can play multiple positions in as well. And when you have that mentality and you have the physical gifts to be as physical as he is when it comes to playing against the run, like you're a versatile guy that can play up and down. Like we can play you in almost any scheme.
So we talk a lot of times about moving guys inside on third down. Would you think about moving him outside, like to 7 technique on third down at 290, or is that?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, maybe on first and second down, if you want him to be physical on the tight end in the run game, play like the big end position potentially. But I think he's going to be best suited as an inside player.
Yeah,
I don't know if he has the foot speed to consistently be out there on the edge.
Okay, all right. I was just asking because I actually liked him on some reps coming off the edge in pass rush situations. All right, a couple guys that missed the cut here. Deion Walker, that's the guy. He was made in the Frankenstein lab of defensive linemen.
No question.
I don't have this confirmed, but I have to think he was banged up at points in 2024 because it didn't look like 2023. And unless something happened that we do know about, typically it's an injury history that we're not hearing about when players don't perform up to the level. What are your thoughts on Deion Walker, especially 23 to 24?
Yeah, but that's the question about him. How does his motor run? Does it run hot at times and then not as hot? So like that was the big question mark with him. Because you go back to the 23 tape, he had 50 pressures at defensive tackle, at nose tackle, which is absurd, right? For a guy that's 6'7", 330 pounds.
Yep.
I go to that Ole Miss game, and he was maybe the most dominant player on the field that day. And this is 24. It's not even in 23. So at times he runs hot, and then times he runs cold. So that's the concern with a guy like him. And most guys that size, you think he's just going to be a first, second down plugger type guy. No, this is an athletic guy. Like he can pass rush. We saw that at the Senior Bowl. I remember we were all sitting up at the 50-yard line, right? And, everybody, there was a few guys around us, few guys that were on the beat writers and stuff. And a lot of guys like, I'm not as high on Deion Walker. I think he just plays high. I mean, he's 6'7". Like him playing low would be like somebody that's 6'1", which is still pretty high, right?
Right.
And then there's a play that happens in team period where he splits the double team in pass rush, where he beats the guard and beats the center and gets a sack. And I turned to the guys like, did he play low enough right there? So like this is a guy, if you can get him where he played like he did in 23, or even just like that Ole Miss game, it's a home run pick in the second round. But that's the concern, and that's why he may drop to the third, because people just don't know, does he run hot? Does he run cold? Like, why isn't he consistently dominating like he did in 23 and then the Ole Miss game?
And over the summer, he was a top 15 pick, not even a doubt about it.
Oh, so, it wasn't even talked about. It was like he was going top 15.
So I did a 3-round mock draft earlier this week, and tell me what you think about this. So I had the Chargers taking Colson Loveland at the bottom of the first, and then I had Jim Harbaugh getting his hands on Deion Walker in the second. And if anyone can get the most out of a player, it feels like Jim Harbaugh. And in that defense, that almost feels like a steal if you can unlock who Deion Walker is, if it's not injury related. Maybe
Correct.
Mike T can get him. Maybe Jim Harbaugh can get him. But that feels like, because again, if I told you in August, hey man, the Chargers are going to get Deion Walker at pick 55, you'd have thought you'd have given me a drug test.
You'd have been like this. Yeah, that's amazing. But what happened to him? Did he get hurt?
Exactly. Let's hop in the time machine and find out together. Another guy who has been consistent throughout his career, and we have not talked a lot about him, and I'm glad you had him on your list. Tyleik Williams at Ohio State, 6'3", almost 334. 35 and a half inch arms. Worked out at his pro day at Ohio State. I was there. He actually stumbled, I think, during the 40. It
hurt his hamstring, right?
And I think it was a hammy injury, which is best case scenario. Like, you don't want to blow your knee out running the 40. So I love this kid, and it's sort of funny we didn't talk a lot about him, especially all the time we spent talking about the Ohio State players on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, he's a bigger, thicker defensive tackle, and he does a really good job in the run game. He's another guy that's going to help you one day the first day in the run game. There was a clip I posted the other day, Rye, where he takes on a double team, but he falls to a knee and then splits the double team and comes out and gets the tackle. Like, to have that type of bendability and a body that size is rare, right? To be able to, we call that a pop back. Like, you take it down to a knee and then you split, you pop back up through the double team, because usually the tackle or guard, they have to go to the next level on that double team. And that's exactly what happened. And he split through and made the tackle for no gain. So, like, again, does a really good job playing with extension. Like most guys, plays a little bit high at times. I think he's more of a push the pocket type of guy when it comes to pass rush, but he's going to be a guy that helps your run defense on day one.
Hey, let me ask you this, because this is one of the notes I made about Tyleik in the pass rush. I said they use him at Ohio State to ear hold a tackle on these TE stunts, the tackle in stunts. Is that a thing that you can be good at? Can you be the guy that sort of leads the way on the stunts?
I mean, Kobe Turner has made his career the first 2 years doing that. I think you have to be, and I kind of like made my career as that too, right? Because I wasn't a guy that consistently could just go out there and win one-on-one. Now, I'm proud of myself on getting better at that. Yeah. But as far as setting up games and, understanding protections and knowing how to run games efficiently, you can make a long career in the NFL and get like 5, 6, 7 sacks a year if you know how to run pass rush games. Like, for real, if you're efficient at running pass rush games and understanding leverage when it comes to where the guard and tackle are supposed to set and how to get them on 2 different levels. Because that's the one thing as an offensive line, you kind of all want to be on one. When you get on 2 levels, that's where it's trouble, right? For you in regards to being able to redirect and pass off pass rush games. So, like, you can make a career of that. Like, Kobe Turner, like he literally setting up those pass rush games. You see it a lot of times too with Jared Verse and Braden Fist does a really good job too of setting up pass rush games to set guys like Jared Verse free as well. If you have an efficient defensive line that knows how to rush as one unit when it comes to pass rush games, everybody can eat up front.
I'm glad that's fantastic, because that's it's in my notes, and that could be what your pass rush superpower is. Setting up your teammates, and then when you crush it against the run like Tyleik does, and these are conversations you're obviously having in the draft room when you're talking to the defensive line coach and so on and so forth. But I have him again graded very closely with TJ Sanders and very closely with Vernon Broughton, like right in that range, middle day 2, maybe even the second round. You feel okay with that?
Yeah, middle day 2. I don't think either one of those 3 guys slips to the 3rd round, but I think they'll be middle day 2.
All right, here's my comp.
I mean, middle round 2. I don't want to say day 2 because that means 3rd round 2, but middle round 2, yeah.
Okay, here's my comp for Tyleik, and you can tell me how much you hate it or love it. At this point, I'm so used to people hating him, I'm okay with it. But my first thought was, because this guy was juiced up coming out and bigger than perhaps people thought he was, Travis Jones out of UConn.
I think Travis was was he a little bit bigger than him?
Tyleik weighed 234. Do you think Travis weighed more than that? Let's see what Travis weighed.
Tyleik is 334?
Yeah, that's what I had him at the combine.
Oh, no, that's actually a pretty good comp then. I think Travis is a better rusher than him, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Travis is an athlete, man.
He is an athlete.
I could look for Travis to be like a Pro Bowl player this year. Like, Travis is an athlete. Like, that's why sometimes Baltimore leaves him in there on 3rd down next to Matabike, because he can get after the quarterback. So, yeah, I think Travis is a little bit better of an athlete. But that's a pretty good comparison because they were both really good against the run coming out.
And that's a good point about Travis's athleticism, because it's sort of the Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant thing. It had Travis Jones been on another team without Matabike, perhaps his athleticism would stick out a little more, but Matabike is just such an animal that your eyes go to him naturally if you're just watching on Sundays. All right, that's it. That's our top 10. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolen, Darius Alexander, Derrick Hamilton, TJ Sanders, and then Vernon Broughton, and then Omarr, Norman-Lott, Alfred Collins, Shemar Turner wrapping out. Deion Walker and Tyleik just missed the cut. Leger, I appreciate you joining us, man. That was very informative, and I'll just tell you what Kyle told me. He said offensive linemen are smart and defensive linemen are dumb. I don't know if you have a rebuttal to that.
Offensive linemen suck.
I had to let you know. I couldn't keep you in the dark on that. I couldn't let Kyle do you like that.
The disrespect is real.
All right, that's a wrap on episode 241. I can't believe we're 241 episodes into this thing. Thanks to my guy Leger. Thanks to Striker for producing. Thanks to all you guys who watch and listen, and we will catch you guys on the next one.